It's another edition of Behind the Mic with AudioFile magazine. I'm Jo Reed. Leslie Fine is with me, and we've been having a good time this week. Hey, Leslie.
Hi, Jo. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. So, how are you going to end your week?
We're going to end with a collection of essays. It's titled Ordinary Time, Lessons Learned While Staying Put. And it's by Annie B. Jones, and she also narrates this audiobook collection.
Well, now, Annie B. Jones has a podcast from the Front Porch, but
Yes.
podcasting is different from audiobook narration. So,
Well, I think she makes the adjustment really, really well. Yes, I really do.
okay.
It's a really interesting collection of essays. Jones is an owner of a small bookstore, and so she's kind of musing on the pros and cons of staying in one place. She's in these essays she talks a little bit about how the world has become so mobile. Everyone's moving around, and she's talking about like what it means to stay in one place instead of moving. So we have a lot of wide-ranging stories, but they all kind of come back to that idea of staying put, being rooted in one place.
And her bookstore is in a very small town in Georgia, correct?
Correct. Yes, it is.
So, she's just not staying put. She's really immersing herself in a community.
Yes, yes, in the way that you do with a smaller town. Yes, she talks about those relationships and that idea of home and faith. She has it divided up into sections, which I think is really interesting, and then essays
Mhm.
within those sections. So she has things like staying friends. How do you stay friends when people are moving and you're staying, or staying faithful, or staying grounded, and underneath that she has within those headings she has different musings on what each essay kind of talks about, what it means to stay you or stay put. And it's interesting. I feel like this is another one of those collections where there's something for everyone.
And it's also interesting for a bookstore owner and from the Front Porch. Obviously, she talks about books a lot, but this sounds like it's less about books, but really more about lessons she learned, her story in different aspects.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly books are mentioned and it's
Yeah.
kind of fun. Like she'll talk about, the role of Anne of Green Gables, for example. She'll have these little snippets or she'll talk about developing friendships through book clubs, things like that. But you're right. It is mainly about just that larger idea of reflecting on life, where you came from, why you chose to stay there, what it means, the challenges that you face, if you stay, as well as the rewards. So it's really a cool kind of to me it was a kind of essay collection like none I've ever listened to before. And I thought that was worth visiting, because you can't help but reflect on yourself as you're hearing her stories.
Well, why don't we hear a little bit now? Set this up.
Sure. So this excerpt, she's reflecting on her bookstore. And of course, the pandemic had an impact on all kinds of businesses. So, as an independent bookstore owner, she talks about how they weathered the pandemic. And the thing about Jones's voice that I love is there's just a sweetness to it. Like it's so gentle. And so, I feel like she's confiding in us like a friend. So you get a sense of the nature of the audiobook and how she delivers her stories. So she has this really just kind voice that I found wonderful to hear.
Okay. This is Ordinary Time, Lessons Learned While Staying Put. It's written and read by Annie B. Jones.
So we gained all these wonderful new customers. People called us on the phone, kept us company, ordered puzzles when their families got bored from the together time the pandemic required. I was relieved. I still carry in my shoulders the stress and the weight of those years. Every day, I wondered what the point of it all was. A lot of small businesses closed during the pandemic, and although I have no doubt owners made those decisions based on finances and a disrupted world, I also wonder if they were just tired. Pivoting was exhausting, decision-making even more so. I want to say I was crippled by decision fatigue, but I couldn't not make decisions. That wasn't an option. People were counting on me. I just kept putting one foot in front of the other, and all these years later, it's still a stress-filled blur.
Again, it's a welcoming voice.
It is. Some of the stories you might hear and say like, "Oh, that's nice." Like I enjoyed hearing it. And then others, I there's an essay titled "Be Ringo," and I was talking out loud as I was listening to it like, "Oh my goodness, I thought the same thing." I felt like, she was a kindred spirit, especially for that particular essay. And I think many listeners will have that same experience, and other stories will be like, "Oh yes, okay, that's interesting." And then suddenly you'll be like, "Yes, I totally understand what you mean." There's a friendliness to it that I think is inspiring and again will hopefully inspire people to reflect on what they have before them and sort of be happy with that and say like, "Okay, I'm good with staying put with this, but I think maybe I'll move on when it comes to that." And maybe that will help folks feel happier.
And as I'm looking, she isn't just, good for an author. She got an Earphones Award for this.
She did, which is pretty fantastic,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I agree. So hooray. I think, it really does help. She knows how to use her voice from the podcast, even though obviously narrating an audiobook is different, but it sounds, and from the excerpt, I mean, she did a wonderful job, which is great and not always the case with others.
That is true.
So this is Ordinary Time, Lessons Learned While Staying Put, written and read by Annie B. Jones. Well, you had an earphone-studded week and some really great titles. Leslie, it was really a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you as always. It's great to talk audiobooks with you.
Tomorrow, it's a bonus edition of Behind the Mic. AudioFile's publisher Michelle Cobb talks to Golden Voice narrator Bonnie Turpin about the Gospel According to Sasha Renee, the first entry in the Gospel of Grace Women trilogy. That's tomorrow, Bonnie Turpin in conversation with Michelle Cobb. Don't miss it.
Support for today's episode comes from Night Watcher, a psychological thriller read by Will Collier and Helen Laser, with an exclusive author's note from Daphne Woolsencroft.